Across ancient civilizations there existed books believed to hold visions powerful enough to shape the path of humanity. These texts did not exist for simple guidance or entertainment. They were created with the belief that written prophecies could influence rulers, redirect nations, and determine decisions that affected entire generations. Their pages combined symbolic language, spiritual warnings, and descriptions of future cycles that many interpreted as maps of destiny. Among the most influential of these prophetic works are the Oracle of Delphi, the I Ching, the Popol Vuh, the Prophecies of Malachy, and the Chilam Balam of Chumayel. Each came from a different world, yet all shared a central idea. The future could be read, and understanding it granted power. The Oracle of Delphi is remembered as a sacred place in ancient Greece, but its influence was preserved in written records that compiled messages interpreted from the sanctuary. These texts guided leaders in moments of uncertainty. The words inside were ambiguous by design, inviting interpretation and allowing multiple outcomes depending on how the reader understood them. The power of the Oracle of Delphi was not only spiritual. It shaped military campaigns, political alliances, and decisions about the founding of cities. In an era where people believed that the will of the divine directed the material world, a written message from this source could redirect the course of an entire region. The I Ching emerged in ancient China and is considered one of the oldest systems of divination ever recorded. Instead of predicting fixed events, the book teaches how universal patterns shift and how those shifts affect human life. Through its hexagrams, the I Ching presents a world where everything changes and where wisdom comes from understanding these transformations. For rulers, scholars, and spiritual practitioners, the book was a guide to moments of decision. It advised patience, action, caution, or reflection depending on the pattern that appeared. Its power did not lie in foretelling events, but in shaping how people responded to challenges and how they interpreted the natural flow of time. The Popol Vuh of the Maya contains creation narratives, cosmic cycles, and prophetic descriptions linked to the balance between humanity and the universe. Though rich in mythic storytelling, the prophetic elements of the Popol Vuh describe eras that rise and fall according to human actions and celestial movements. For Maya leaders, these writings were essential tools. They indicated when rituals should be performed, how to interpret the sky, and how to maintain harmony with the forces believed to sustain life. It was both a historical memory and a spiritual map, guiding actions that affected entire communities. The Prophecies of Malachy appeared in medieval Europe and presented a sequence of symbolic mottos that many believed corresponded to future spiritual leaders. Although their authorship is debated, the influence of the Prophecies of Malachy grew because people connected each phrase to events of their own time. The power of the text did not depend on scientific accuracy. It came from the impact it had on expectations, fears, and beliefs. Readers interpreted the mottos as signs of major changes approaching, and these interpretations shaped political conversations and spiritual concerns for centuries. The Chilam Balam of Chumayel blends historical accounts with cycles of prophecy rooted in Maya cosmology. It presents a world where natural and social events repeat in long patterns, creating eras of decline and renewal. The book was used to understand transformations affecting entire regions, offering an explanation for droughts, conflicts, migrations, and cultural shifts. Its prophecies did not aim to frighten but to teach that every event belonged to a greater rhythm. By recognizing that rhythm, communities believed they could prepare for future challenges. Each of these books held power because people believed their messages were windows into forces greater than themselves. They shaped decisions, maintained order, and influenced the destiny of cultures that trusted their words. In their pages, humanity sought answers to uncertainty and found guidance that echoed far beyond the moment in which each prophecy was written. Throughout history, the influence of these prophetic books grew not only because of the messages they contained, but because of the environments in which they were created. Each text emerged from a world where the line between spiritual truth and political authority was extremely thin. When leaders believed that their decisions aligned with a written prophecy, the people followed with certainty. This gave the books an authority far beyond intellectual knowledge. They shaped laws, guided alliances, and justified actions that changed entire civilizations. The power of prophecy was not simply the prediction of events. It was the belief that destiny could be revealed through written symbols that connected human experience with forces beyond ordinary understanding. The Oracle of Delphi gained strength because Greek culture placed high importance on harmony between humanity and the divine. When its written interpretations reached the hands of generals or lawmakers, they were treated as serious guidance rather than superstition. The messages were not direct commands. They were crafted in language that required interpretation, and this ambiguity allowed leaders to adapt them to the needs of the moment. This gave the texts flexibility and longevity. Even centuries later, scholars continued to analyze the same words, seeking insight into political conflict, personal decisions, or major cultural transformations. The ability of the written Oracle of Delphi to remain relevant over long periods of time demonstrates how deeply it shaped collective thought. The I Ching grew in influence for a different reason. Ancient China valued the study of patterns and cycles, believing that wisdom came from understanding how the natural world moved. Instead of describing fixed moments in the future, the I Ching teaches how internal and external forces interact. This approach created a form of prophecy that felt more practical. It guided rulers through periods of instability by showing how actions aligned with the greater movement of life. Its pages communicated that every challenge had a position in a broader cycle and that no situation was permanent. This worldview shaped leadership styles, encouraged reflection before action, and influenced the development of philosophy across the region for thousands of years. The Popol Vuh was equally powerful because it connected the destiny of a people with the cosmic structure they believed in. The Maya did not separate daily life from celestial cycles. They saw time as a series of repeating phases, each influenced by the behavior of humanity and the balance of nature. The prophetic sections of the Popol Vuh reflected this understanding. They warned that imbalance brought destruction, while harmony brought renewal. These writings shaped agricultural practices, ceremonial traditions, and political choices. Communities saw themselves as part of a greater universal order, and the book served as a reminder that every action carried consequences not only for the present but for future generations. The Prophecies of Malachy influenced Europe by introducing a sense of anticipation that reached far beyond religious circles. Each symbolic motto attached to a future leader created discussions about change, crisis, and the direction of the world. Individuals began to interpret current events as signs connected to the prophecies, and this created a cultural environment where political shifts were viewed as part of a written destiny. The text gained more strength during periods of uncertainty, when societies sought explanations for conflict, instability, or transformation. The belief that every leader fit into a prophetic sequence gave meaning to situations that otherwise felt chaotic and unpredictable. The Chilam Balam of Chumayel shaped communities through its detailed understanding of cycles. It described periods of difficulty followed by renewal, teaching that suffering was part of a much larger process. This interpretation helped communities endure natural disasters, invasions, and cultural pressures by viewing them as moments within a repeating pattern rather than isolated tragedies. The book provided a framework through which people interpreted change, giving them a sense of continuity even during unstable times. This connection between prophecy and cultural identity became one of the reasons the text remained influential despite centuries of transformation in the region. These 5 books shaped human destiny not because they dictated exact future events, but because they provided frameworks for understanding the unknown. They gave people ways to interpret crisis, evaluate choices, and justify decisions. They taught that destiny was not a random force but a pattern that could be read, understood, and even influenced through wisdom. Their power continues today because they reveal something timeless. Humanity has always sought meaning in uncertainty, and these texts offered that meaning in a form that connected individuals, communities, and nations to something greater than themselves. The endurance of these prophetic books across centuries reveals how deeply human societies depend on meaning when facing uncertainty. Each text survived the rise and fall of kingdoms, the transformation of languages, and the evolution of belief systems. Yet their core ideas continued to guide people because they addressed universal fears and hopes. They spoke to moments of crisis, moments of opportunity, and moments in which entire communities stood on the edge of change. Their words formed a bridge between the visible world and the hidden forces that ancient cultures believed shaped human experience. Understanding why these works remained influential requires examining how they shaped identity, memory, and the worldview of countless generations. The Oracle of Delphi continued to influence thought long after its sanctuary closed. Scholars treated its written interpretations as keys to understanding ancient decisions. Philosophers studied its language to decode the mindset of past rulers. The text offered insight not only into prophecy but into how societies justified war, peace, and expansion. Even in later eras, when belief in divine messages diminished, the writings from Delphi continued to represent the idea that knowledge carries responsibility. They reminded readers that choices guided by wisdom could prevent catastrophe and that ignoring the lessons of the past could bring ruin. In this way, the prophetic texts became part of a cultural foundation that shaped the intellectual history of the region. The I Ching maintained its influence by adapting to new environments while preserving its philosophical core. Dynasties changed, belief systems shifted, and political structures evolved, yet the book remained relevant because it addressed the inner nature of decision-making. Instead of focusing on fixed predictions, it encouraged readers to understand their own position within a larger pattern. This approach allowed the I Ching to transcend time. It was used to guide personal reflection, diplomatic strategy, and the study of natural science. By connecting human behavior with universal movement, it gave individuals a sense of alignment with something far greater than personal ambition. This sense of alignment reinforced its authority as a book that could guide destiny through balanced action. The Popol Vuh gained renewed importance during periods of cultural transformation. For the Maya, it preserved identity when external forces threatened to erase their traditions. The prophetic cycles inside the book reminded communities that what they endured had occurred before and would occur again. This created resilience because the text offered context for suffering and hope for renewal. Even in modern times, the Popol Vuh represents more than mythology. It is a record of a worldview in which humanity is woven into cosmic rhythms. This perspective gave communities strength, continuity, and a sense of purpose, demonstrating how prophecy can unify a culture across centuries. The Prophecies of Malachy continued to influence thought by feeding the human desire to find patterns in history. Every time a new leader emerged, people returned to the text to search for connections. This cycle of interpretation kept the prophecies alive, turning each phrase into a puzzle that invited debate and speculation. During times of political change, the book offered a sense of direction, even when events seemed disorderly. Its power did not come from accuracy, but from its ability to frame history as part of a written sequence. This gave meaning to transitions and encouraged people to view political transformations as stages within a larger narrative. The Chilam Balam of Chumayel endured because it preserved ancient knowledge that linked people to their land and their ancestors. Its cycles of prophecy explained the repeating nature of drought, conflict, abundance, and renewal. Instead of seeing their struggles as isolated, communities understood them as part of a greater pattern. This perspective prevented despair and strengthened cultural unity. The book's combination of memory and prophecy created a continuous thread across generations. It reminded people that they existed within a long sequence of events and that understanding that sequence was a form of power. These prophetic books shaped human destiny by offering frameworks that connected past, present, and future. They explained the world through systems of meaning that became deeply rooted in culture. Whether through symbols, cycles, or coded messages, each text offered a way to face uncertainty without fear. They taught that destiny was something that could be read, interpreted, and prepared for. Their survival across centuries proves that humanity will always seek wisdom in written words, especially when those words carry the promise of understanding the forces that guide existence. Across every culture that preserved these prophetic books, one idea remained constant. People believed that knowledge recorded in writing could outlast the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The final reason these 5 texts shaped human destiny is that they created a shared language for understanding the unknown. They gave leaders and ordinary people a way to describe forces they could not control, and by naming these forces through prophecy, they transformed fear into structure, uncertainty into interpretation, and chaos into a story that could be followed. When a community believed that its future was part of a greater pattern, the weight of every crisis felt different. Events were no longer random. They became chapters within a narrative shaped by the wisdom of ancestors. The Oracle of Delphi demonstrated this clearly. Even after its prophetic role ended, the written interpretations continued to influence new generations because they encouraged reflection rather than simple obedience. The text taught that meaning could be hidden beneath symbolic language, and that those who sought wisdom had to approach knowledge with patience. This idea shaped the intellectual tradition of entire regions and helped create a culture that valued philosophical inquiry. As a result, the influence of the Oracle of Delphi continued long after belief in divine intervention faded, showing how prophecy can evolve into a lasting system of thought. The I Ching carried its power by teaching that human life unfolds in cycles that mirror the natural world. This understanding shaped decisions for thousands of years because it offered a sense of stability even in moments of intense change. When rulers consulted the I Ching, they were not looking for superstition, but for clarity about the relationship between their decisions and the movement of the world around them. This balance between action and reflection allowed the book to remain relevant across changing political eras, philosophical schools, and cultural transformations. It became a guide for those who wished to influence destiny through wisdom rather than force. The Popol Vuh preserved the worldview of the Maya at a time when their traditions faced enormous pressure. Its prophetic cycles protected cultural identity by reminding communities that their existence was part of a cosmic story. The book encouraged resilience because it suggested that destruction and renewal were natural stages rather than permanent states. This gave strength to communities who needed meaning during times of hardship. The Popol Vuh did not dictate the future. Instead, it offered a structure through which people could understand their place in the universe and carry their knowledge forward. The Prophecies of Malachy continued to shape human thought by inviting interpretation during every era of change. When people linked historical events with the symbolic mottos of the text, they created a sense of continuity in moments that felt uncertain. This gave the book influence even among those who questioned its origin. It became a reminder that people naturally seek patterns and that these patterns can become powerful when written within a prophetic framework. As long as societies continue to search for meaning in political and spiritual transitions, texts like the Prophecies of Malachy will remain part of public imagination. The Chilam Balam of Chumayel endured because it connected prophecy with memory. It taught that understanding the cycles of the past was essential for navigating the challenges of the present. Communities used it to interpret natural events, cultural changes, and moments of instability. The message of the book was not to fear destiny but to recognize that everything exists within a repeating rhythm. This understanding allowed societies to move forward even during periods of loss, knowing that renewal would eventually follow. In the end, these 5 prophetic books shaped human destiny not by forcing predictions but by offering frameworks that helped civilizations survive uncertainty. They guided decisions, inspired reflection, and connected people to something greater than themselves. Their power came from the belief that written words could reveal truths hidden beneath the surface of life. As long as humanity continues to search for meaning, these ancient prophecies will remain echoes of a timeless desire. The desire to understand the future, to prepare for it, and to find purpose within the mysteries that define existence.